Hi there, everybody. You can see we've got some participants climbing in here. See some familiar names on the call. Nice to have everyone joining us to learn about the Scatterplot. Give it just 10 seconds here, let some other attendees join in, then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining today's call. My name is Tom Joyce. I am a customer success manager here at YCharts. Today's webinar is called YCharts for Advisors, Streamlining your investment research and the new Scatterplot tool. So as mentioned previously, I am part of the customer success team here. The customer success team is available post-sales cycle to help with all of our current clients. We are able to assist in onboarding, ongoing training, any Q&A that you might have. That's kind of our role here. During today's call, we are going to run through a few scenarios using our Scatterplot tool. So first, we're going to compare a prospect's portfolio against a slate of models. Second, we are going to jump into our stock screener tool to analyze some results and then pull that into our Scatterplot. And then lastly, we are going to look at a topic that's been popular for many years now, active versus passive management. During today's call, please feel free to hit us with any questions in the Q&A of the Zoom call. We are happy to address them. Please feel free to start a free trial at YCharts.com or speak to a team member through that line. Also, feel free to reach out directly to your sales representative as well as your account representative or anyone on the chat support team. We will gladly assist you. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into YCharts and take a deeper look at our Scatterplot tool. Found under the tools dropdown, we are going to have our Scatterplot tool, which is sandwiched right in between the fundamental chart and the technical chart. So it's put there for a reason. Scatterplot is going to be a great tool that allows for visual analysis. So in contrast to a data table, this is going to allow clients and end investors and users to actually visualize their data, compare and contrast anything from a stock to an ETF to a model portfolio. Really helps deliver a narrative. In the top left-hand corner, the layout looks pretty familiar to what we've seen in other tools, such as our fundamental chart or our comp tables tool. In the top left-hand corner, we've got the new Scatterplot unsaved button. This has everything from open to save to close and delete. Similar to what we've seen on other parts of the tool. Very similar to your file tab. And that's going to play a role later in today's call. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these inputs. In the top left-hand corner, we've got the securities and lists search bar. That allows us to type in any security that we'd like. We've also got this list button. That allows us to pull in any specific category under a security type, as well as any list that we've created, any watch list we've created, any screen that we've created, any of our model portfolio holdings, among other categories. We've also got a few types of Scatterplot type here in terms of what data we're going to be seeing. The first one and the default is the point in time. That is going to be current data. Whereas the time series is actually going to give us historical data. You'll likely see more data points when looking at the time series. For further questions on that and further detail, we've got the question mark there that's accessible, and this will give you a detailed understanding of what point in time is going to give you in comparison to the time series data. Now you'll notice we've got then the x-axis input and the y-axis input. I have my default set up. I have it to a standard deviation of monthly returns, as well as 3-year total returns as of the previous month's close. This is actually a default. Yours is going to look a little different from mine. If I click reset all in the top right, yours is going to look pretty similar to that. Now, my recommendation is if you're going to be taking a look at the same metrics over and over within this Scatterplot tool, go ahead and make your life easier by actually entering in whichever metrics you'd like to use, whether you're typing for those metrics or using the browse button. And then you have the ability to set something as a default. And so that's why every time I come into the tools dropdown and click Scatterplot, this is what I'm seeing. Now, whichever time frame you'd like to use, that's up to your discretion. I use a 3-year, go ahead and use 5, 1, whatever is most convenient or applicable to your practice. All right, so before we get into our workflows, let's just take a look at a basic input of what we might want to see. So a very basic scatter plot can look something like this with 2 data points on that plot. Easiest way to do that, top left-hand corner, securities and lists. We can go into the search bar and look at the S&P 500 total return. So because I already had my metrics readily available, once I type in the security, the data point automatically populates. So we've got 1 data point on our scatter plot. Let's go ahead and add a second. I want to pull in a mutual fund balance model. And you can see as I start to type, my autocompleter narrows down our results, making it easier for us to identify exactly what we want to take a look at. So we can see in our legend at the top, our S&P 500 total return is in purple, and you can see what those data points are. And then below that, the mutual fund balance model is in orange. You can hover over these data points, see exactly what the metrics are, as well as when the data is as of. This is pretty interesting just to see the S&P 500 in comparison to a mutual fund balance model. We're going to see about half the return and half the risk in comparison. So that is the gist of what the scatter plot is going to bring to the table. From here, we will start to dive into a couple more extensive workflows that hopefully you'll be able to implement into your practice. And I've seen a lot of success over the last 3 to 4 weeks that this has been available from other advisors and clients. The first one we're going to go ahead and take a look at is found under our scatter plot, looking at a slate of models relative to a prospect account that I've uploaded. So this is going to be our end result. I'll go ahead and take us through what the workflow looks like to get us there. Okay, so under the tools dropdown at the top, I'm going to head into our model portfolios tool. For those that are unfamiliar with our model portfolios tool, this is going to be a great tool for portfolio level analysis, whether you want to look at your own internal models, whether you want to look at a current client's account or snapshot, and then lastly, a prospect account. You do have the ability to upload both fixed models and dynamic models, allowing you to get everything from risk to return to allocation and fundamental data. That's what you'll be getting within the model portfolios tool. Now in the top right-hand corner, I've got the create button. There's a few options that I can choose from. Blank model portfolio, which is the fixed model that I was just talking about. Blank dynamic model portfolio, which allows you to show those transaction changes over time. And then lastly, would be this new from template. And this is actually what I used in order to create the output on the scatter plot when looking through those templates. I click new from template, And it presents us this first category, basic ETF models. We have basic ETF models ranging from an all bonds portfolio, ranging into a semi-equity portfolio, and then lastly, an all equity portfolio. Upon creating those models, they were becoming a part of my model portfolio list page. And then what I did from there, once they were all created, and again, they can be the models in the new from template, they can be your own models. It's entirely up to you, the user. But then once those were created, I actually generated this watch list. I generated this watch list to monitor these portfolios, as well as the ability to easily pull them into any other part of the tool, such as the Scatterplot. Just going to save me a little bit of time, make my life easier within the system. The next thing I did, now we have our models readily available. How about that prospect account? Under the tools dropdown, we can head into model portfolios. Now, happy to report here in the top right-hand corner, I actually pulled my Nick Rogers family Taylor Rogers individual account from one of our new features that isn't directly addressed in today's call, or isn't something that we take a deep dive on, but we can talk about it here, is the ability to import holdings. So we have a Black Diamond one that I have readily available. We also have an Orion integration for our Orion users. And so via that Black Diamond integration, I pulled in this Nick Rogers family Taylor Rogers individual account. I'll be able to touch on that a little bit later in today's call. Excellent. So from here, we'll go under the tools dropdown into our Scatterplot functionality. So for the most part, this is laid out exactly how I want to see it. I want to use the risk on the x-axis, and I want to use my returns on the y-axis in order to give us that risk reward type of idea. So because I created that watch list, I no longer have to type in each model. I can very simply go ahead and click this list button, select my list in the top left-hand corner. And there's a few things that I can do. If I know the name of my watch list, go ahead and just type forward in the search bar at the top. If you're not sure which one you want to use, you can very easily click this drop down, identify all the watch lists that you have created, click the one that you want to use, and select submit. So now we have our entire slate of models, ranging from in the bottom left-hand corner of an all bonds, and then slowly progressing, you can see the all equity portfolio in the top right. So that's what we are going to be receiving on our scatter plot. If we want to compare this to our prospect account, in the top left-hand corner, this is where I will search for my Taylor Rogers prospect account. I can select my Taylor Rogers individual, and it will automatically plot onto the account. All right, so we've got some data points. Now let's go ahead and try and work with them. I can hover over and see here's my 40% equity, here's my 50% equity. I want to customize this a little bit. I want to make it a little bit easier to read. On the left-hand side, you'll notice a few things: the reorder button, the customize button, and then the remove button. First one I'm going to choose is adjusting the Taylor Rogers individual data point. I want to call that one out specifically, especially if it's going to be used with the end user. I'll click customize. Few different things that you can do to make edits to this point. Go ahead and select whatever shape you'd like, whether that's a circle, a triangle, a diamond, a cross. I'll go ahead and choose diamond in this situation. Your ability to select the color is available as well. Defaults to orange. Go ahead and change it to whatever you'd like. I'll select a green. And then lastly, the ability to choose the size. So if you're trying to emphasize something on the chart, definitely makes sense. It defaults to medium, toggle it on to large. You can even toggle the other ones to small if you're trying to really make something more emphasized. And then the last thing I'll do among these options towards the bottom, I just want to show the name of this portfolio and select apply. And you'll be able to see what adjustment is made to our chart here. I'm also going to do the exact same thing with our models. I'm not going to make as extensive as enhancements. Really what I want to do here, I just want to show the name. I want to know exactly which model I'm looking at. And then I can click apply. So this gives us a pretty good idea of what we're looking at, right? We've got standard deviation going left to right, and then total returns going up and down. What's pretty interesting, maybe not all of these models are as representative of what this client or prospect might be considering. So if you're looking to dive a little bit deeper relative to the models this prospect might be interested in looking at, go ahead and click on a specific region. You'll notice how that gets a little bit darker of a shade. And now I can see how clearly this portfolio, both risk and return, has performed. This is a rather interesting depiction depending upon what Taylor Rogers' risk situation might be. We can say, this is very interesting to see how your current portfolio is set up in comparison to our 70% equity, which is gaining X amount higher in terms of return. We're nearly mimicking your risk over the trailing 3 years. Even still, you could say that for a 60% equity, and so on and so forth, with whichever models you're talking about. So that's our first workflow. When pulling in a slate of models and analyzing it relative to a prospect, how to deliver that narrative. Moving into the second workflow, we'll be taking a look at pulling some stocks into our Scatterplot. So this is going to be our end goal here, to take a look at these stocks. The way we're going to get there is jumping into our stock screener. So under the tools dropdown, we'll head into our stock screener. Now, the stock screener is a great feature for identifying new securities, identifying replacement securities, keeping an eye on a peer group. A use case along those lines is going to be an extreme benefit of what both the stock or the fund screener provides. One of my favorite things about the stock screener and fund screener, that is going to be located in the top left-hand corner. So when I click this new stock screen on save button, we see it in the Scatterplot as well. One of these items is going to be new from template, which we'll see in the stock screener, and in the coming months, we will see in the Scatterplot. But for right now, we have this in our stock screener, and I'll be able to select new from template. What's nice about this is you are getting some idea generation tools within our screener. So notice how on the left-hand side, we've got specific categories: growth category, value category, specialty, and events. On the right-hand side, you've got the corresponding screens that fit that type of category. So just for example's sake, if I click momentum stocks and selected start, this is going to generate a screen on my behalf, which I can then very, very easily make any adjustments to if needed. So for example, if I like what the screen is putting out, then by all means, I can use it as is. Otherwise, should I need to make any adjustments, that's fair game as well. And here we can see what the output looks like. Everything from the metric filters that are being used to the metric columns that have been added to this screen. My one piece of advice here, should you make any adjustments to this template, or should you want to pull this template into, or this template of screens or security, excuse me, into another part of the tool, please go ahead and click Save As and give it your own title. That will allow you to then pull it open at a later date, as well as pull in this group of securities into another feature. Now, in this scenario, I'm going to go ahead and click Reset All in the top right, and we'll just build a quick screen. This year has been a hot topic for IPOs. So I'll do a quick analysis of what those IPOs look like and what the performances look like. So clicking Modify in the top left-hand corner, we can choose from several categories. In this category, I know that I want to go into my events section and into recent IPOs. I'll select a few items, in this case, last year. And then I'm going to come back into this screener and I'm going to select one more item. But for now, just last year, and then click Submit. That'll bring us down from about 29,000 equities to 2,700. From here, I'll go ahead and click Modify and back into Exchanges as my category. I want to select all major US exchanges. This will remove the thinly traded securities that we may not want to see. It's okay if you want to keep them in there, totally fine. You can skip this move, but pretty often I will see advisors that like to select all major US exchanges, get those securities that they're accustomed to seeing. For our Canadian advisors, please feel free to use the same type of idea with exchanges. And in clicking Submit, this gives us about 1,200 results. Okay, so now we've got our list of securities. And in this case, I just want to see who the best performers are. That's really all I want to see in this situation. So I'll go ahead and click Add Filter. It's going to pull up the ability for me to create metric filters. I'm going to bypass range, equation, and percentile. I'll jump straight into rank. Now, this filtering mechanism is going to allow us to screen on quantitative information in comparison to the qualitative side of things that we saw through that Modify button. So adding filter allows us to use the quant measures, risk, return, financial statement data, so on and so forth. All right, so in my search bar, all I'm going to do is type in all-time annualized. And what's nice, the more you type, the more our autocompleter will have a defined list. So I can keep going. And when I click daily, you can see it removes a pretty decent chunk. I just want to see all-time total returns as of the previous day's close. Because obviously not all of these securities IPO'd on the same date over the last year. But I just want to take their all-time performance. Then I'm going to identify how many results I want in my list. So if I choose top one, that's just going to give me one result, which is totally fine. If that's what you want to use, you can really use whatever number or value you'd like. In this example, though, I'm going to go with the top 50. I want to see a list of 50 results, and I do want the higher value to be better. In clicking submit, we've got our results list. So we've got 50 equities to choose from. These results are kind of jumbled based off symbol by sorting based off of total returns. We can see actually what those results look like. Now, in putting this together, it's pretty interesting to see. We do have, give or take, 10 results that do have negative returns. But keep in mind, we are taking the best performers within this class over the last year that are traded on major US exchanges. So just interesting to see, I think. To the right, we can start to build out our data table. We can go through metric columns. We can go through info columns. Metric will be the quantitative side of things. Info columns will be the qualitative side of things. In adding metric columns, I can go ahead and pull in any data points that I might like. In this instance, I'm going to pull in the market cap of these securities. I'm also going to pull in the, excuse me. I'm going to pull in the net income. I'm going to pull in the quarterly net income of these securities. Now, you'll notice I can just keep pulling in really whatever data points I'd like, searching for it at the top, using the categories on the left-hand side, whichever is easiest for you. And in clicking submit, we're not filtering our universe at all. There's still 50 equities here. I'm simply adding data to my table. And I can do the same thing. I can sort from high to low, whatever's most convenient or whatever it is that you're looking to see. I can also add info columns. So if I wanted to see what the IPO date is, maybe what the next earnings release looks like. And in clicking submit, now we can see some more data points as well. All right, now a huge benefit of the Scatterplot is now actually being able to pull this data from a data table into a chart. Very clear, easy to understand, comparable, contrastable Scatterplot. Sometimes it can be really difficult to understand what this data table is showing us in comparison to one another. Allow the Scatterplot to kind of bring that visualization to life in analyzing these metrics. So I'll go ahead and in the top left-hand corner, I'm going to click my new stock screen unsaved, and then I'm going to select Save As. I'm going to go give it a title of IPO performance with IPO date and click Save As. So now what's cool about this screen, it will update. If I pull this screen up in 2 weeks, it'll have the most recent information with the best performers of the all-time total returns. So keep that in mind, just makes it easier. If you like a screen that you've built out, build it. Don't reinvent the wheel next time. You'll be able to come in at a later date and populate the screen with the most recent information. But then we'll backtrack into our Scatterplot tool. And we've got our Scatterplot tool, and now we can do some damage. Now, notice on the left-hand side, my default is here. Now, typically, I would like to see that, but in this situation, that's not exactly relevant. We don't have that amount of history when looking at recent IPOs. We don't have that 3-year track record. Plus, I want to analyze some financial statement data that we saw on the data table. might make more sense to me if I see it visually in a scatter plot. So I'll go ahead and click Reset All in the top right-hand corner. And then back to our top left, we've got the list button. And in selecting my lists, rather than using a watch list, this time I want to pull in a stock screen that I've created. In fact, the stock screen that we just took a look at. So I'll click my stock screens and I'll select my IPO performance with my IPO date and click Submit. Now notice nothing is populated on the scatter plot because we don't have anything on our X and Y axis. So if we want this to look like that, we need to know exactly what's going in our axis. So on the X-axis here, I'm going to go ahead and use the search functionality to bring in our quarterly net income indicator. And then in the Y-axis, I'm going to go ahead and type in market cap. Perfect. So now we've got an easy to understand chart that we're looking at to better visualize where do all of these securities fall when it comes to these metrics. So hovering over these metrics, you can see, yes, with Lucid Group, their quarterly net income was one of the low, actually it was the lowest of the group. On the other side of the coin, they've got the highest market cap. And we can continue hovering over these data points to see what the security is when this data is as of. Much like we did last time with the model portfolios and narrowing into a list, let's say we want to remove these outliers, not necessarily something that we're interested in right now, securities that we're not too interested in. Fair game. Go ahead and hover into this time frame. We're good to go. Or if we want to keep going and looking at this small group, you can just keep sorting. And now you can see all these securities, exactly what their data points are. Also very easy to interchange. So left-hand side, if I wanted to go back to those all-time returns, I select this item. Now it's regenerating that portfolio or that scatter plot for me. And you can hover over and see, here's what our securities are in specific locations. And removing the outliers, driving deeper into this basket of securities. So that's going to be the value of what pulling in a stock screen drives home in the scatter plot. Easy to compare and contrast those financial metrics in an easy to understand scatter plot tool. So that is our second workflow. The third workflow that we talked about was active versus passive management. And this is what we want our final product to look like. We want to pull in the holdings for SPY. We want to pull in the holdings for ARKK. And we want to understand what the risk reward tandem looks like. All right, so last thing we'll do, we are going to use SPY as our passive security, and then we're going to use ARKK as our active security. So we can go ahead and click SPY in the search bar at the top. And we're familiar with these pages. Anytime we're doing a deep dive, this is where you'll do it. I'm going to jump straight into the holdings tab. And what I want to do here, rather than having to type in each of the underlying holdings, if I want to go to this page, just to make your life easier, click the Save as Watch List button. This is great. We've successfully created a watch list called Holdings for SPY. Then we can click the Switch To button in the top right-hand corner. All I'm going to do is type in ARKK, click Enter, and now we've got our top holdings available again. I'm going to do the exact same thing, click Save as Watch List, and click OK. So now we've got our watch lists good to go. We don't have to go to the dashboard and add them to the dashboard. We can bypass all of that. We can go straight back into our Scatterplot. Under the Tools dropdown, into our Scatterplot functionality. Now we're going to go into List, like we have so many times before. We will click My Lists. And in this situation, I'm simply going to type in SPY, and then I'm going to type in ARKK and click Enter on both. You'll notice that it check marks it both for you. Whatever, if you get comfortable using the system like that, autocompleter is a great recommendation. And then I can click Submit. And out comes my underlying holdings. Now, what's great, this populated because I had my default set up. So that's what's going to really be able to save you a little bit of time. But this tells a pretty convincing argument of what you're going to get in terms of a risk versus reward type of situation. So in purple, according to our legend, we've got SPY in purple here. And then in orange, we've got ARKK. So we've got our passive and we've got our active. Now you'll notice that the purple indicators are more in a specific region in comparison to the orange metrics or to the orange data points. You're going to see, the returns right here are varying, but the standard deviation for the most part is going to be located in one region. Here, when it comes to that active management, you're kind of going to get a pretty decent swing on things. Considerable standard deviation, but you're also getting those if you're chasing those returns, this is a pretty easy way to identify that. Now notice one thing for me. I'm going to zoom in the top right-hand corner. I'm going to zoom in on this security because, as I reset, because it looks different than the rest. You'll notice that it's not orange, it's not purple, it's somewhere in between. When I hover over, that is Tesla. That's going to be the one security that overlaps on both. You can see that it's a different color. So no matter which security in here, SPY or ARKK, you are getting a little bit of that action. So we have been looking at the point in time scatterplot type for the majority of what we're looking at. I am going to do one thing here. I'm going to check off SPY and ARKK, my watch list. So in the left hand corner, when I check off, it removes SPY and then accordingly ARKK. What I want to do here is I actually want to pull in SPY, the security, and then ARKK, the security. Not unlike what we saw with our holdings. You can see SPYs on the left-hand side, ARKK on the right-hand side. What I do want to do is switch the scatterplot type of data that we're looking at. So that's point in time. When I click time series, now we've got some different data to look at. So this is going to say over time, what were those trailing 3-year returns and 3-year standard deviations for this security as a whole? So as I hover over a specific time frame, for example, this is as of November 30th. So this is as of the previous month's close. That's the data point that would show on point in time. Why time series provides value is that it allows you to see the trend analysis over time. You can see this was as of the previous month, and we've gone all the way from having these lower returns to now chasing these higher returns on both the index, and then almost alternatively, you're seeing lower returns when it comes to ARKK because this is as of the previous month's close in comparison to earlier this year with those higher returns. Getting a little bit granular, you do have the ability to change the date range on the left-hand side. So feel free to take a look at that and toggle as needed. But those are the three workflows that I wanted to walk through today. So the first thing that we did, we took a look at the slate of model portfolios in comparison to a prospect account. The second, we built a stock screen. We pulled that stock screen into our Scatterplot tool and analyzed those metrics that we were originally looking at a data table, but are much more clear in visualization when looking at a Scatterplot. And then lastly, we took a look at active versus passive management, whether we're looking at the underlying holdings and what exposure you're getting, or the actual fund itself and what the risk and return looks like for those securities. One thing I do want to address, as I know, I'm sure it's going to be a question that will be asked at some point, when I pulled in that portfolio in terms of integration. So under the model portfolios tool, you do have the ability to activate your integration when selecting import holdings. You can set up a new integration here. You can also get a lot of good information under the support tab. Integrations will lead you to that activation page as well. For a step-by-step guidance on how you can implement and activate your integration under the support topics tab into resources, you've got an integrations label for step-by-step when working with both Black Diamond and Orion. Well, hopefully there was some valuable insight today that our users will be able to take away and implement on a go-forward basis. I know we were trying to reserve some time for Q&A. I'll see if there's any questions in the chat, and if not, I'll let everyone go here. Otherwise, we'll try and address some. So let's see if we have anything. Okay, some really good questions here, and one that I would like to touch on if I haven't already. So templates. Yes, templates will be available in the coming months, as well as the ability to export, download as a PDF or a PNG file. Those will be coming likely in the next few months. So we are looking forward to releasing that functionality available. Does the IPO screener also capture IPO and Spax? Yes, we do carry that information under the stock screener functionality. I'm not sure if that question was already addressed, but yes, if you'd like to, we've got the modify button, and you can see both stocks and units here as well. So feel free to screen as needed, security type dependent. If you're new to the system or have any questions, please feel free to reach out to a representative, or whether that's on the customer success team or on the sales side of things. We've also got under the support tab, support information. So please feel free to go into our tools and features. That's probably my favorite. Those have the quick hitters, 5-minute tutorial clips, not asking you to sit in on like a 30 to 45 minute session like we did today. These are quick hitters. These will give you foundational understandings of what each tool can provide. I personally really like those. It'll at least give you a little bit of confidence going into whichever functionality you might be looking for. But as most of our common webinar attendees are aware of, we've got our list of webinars hosted in this section as well. So this will be placed here. The extremely popular Josh Brown webinar that we just hosted can be found there as well as all the webinars that we've actually hosted in the past. So please feel free to peruse these as well. But that should do it for today. If there are no more questions, it was a pleasure to have all of you on board. I hope that the Scatterplot tool is something that you'll be able to implement on a go-forward basis. I know that I've seen so many stories of success over the last 3 to 4 weeks, just about how advisors are using the Scatterplot tool to communicate with their clients. I look forward to hearing, feedback as well from our attendees from today. But everyone have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you back on our next webinar.